if you have anything specific on retail, we can provide those services. And of course, at the same time with process manufacturing. The rest of the industries, we focus based on the strategic customer industry, like, based on the strategic customers we have. If they are spanning into different industries, we do provide services for those customers too. When it comes to the technology, we are partners for IBM and Software AG. And from SAP perspective, we are services partner, platform partner, and also application development partner. Sean, can you please move to the next one? Okay, thank you. So when it comes to the services from on SAP, so these are the different aspects that we cover across SAP. When it comes to the business suite like ECC, CRM, SEM, so which are mostly we consider them as on-premise solutions. Nowadays we have cloud options also for that. So we provide both on-premise and cloud services. Then from the analytics perspective, BW and object. And from the next generation applications, I would say, like HANA, Mobility, Hybris. So these are the different application areas that we focus on. From the industry, I've already mentioned about retail and process manufacturing. And we are recognized as phase 2 plus trusted partners in the industry. So we are very proud to say that we are phase 2 plus, because that is where we come into picture. Like, we will be helping the customers with when they are in a trouble. Like, once you have SAP in your landscape, stabilizing SAP, application maintenance, application lifecycle management, support, other services, rollouts, upgrades, bringing in additional components, functional extensions, all these kind of services we do provide. Sean, can you please go to the next one? The customer engagement commerce. I think this is the right time to hand it over to our speaker so that he can walk you through the rest of the webinar. Thank you. Ms. Ravi?
Thanks, Praveen, and hi, everyone. So from a corporate overview to SAP, so this practice dedicated to customer engagement commerce, it actually covers all the e-commerce, digital marketing, along with the customer relationship management. So this practice overall focuses to ensure that any customer who wants to get engaged with any e-commerce or digital marketing on Hybris and its peripheral application and system can be focused on. We have a presence in some data centers in the US as well as in India. We have close to a 30+ subject matter experts in the stack of all the e-commerce technology, which I'm going to share with you guys, as I move forward. Please move forward, Sean. Sean, can you please move forward? As I was talking about our expertise, so this is the domain we work, and this is a reflection of all our within the organization, how it is organizationally structured. So all our if you see online marketing, online shopping, product management, channel integration, so these are all the sub-modules within any e-commerce or a digital marketing practice. And on top of it, what is being shown here is that what are the different Hybris technology stack components, which we research on a constant basis. And this is cockpits, Hybris PIM, Hybris Commerce, Accelerator, hot folders, cron job, data model type, auto management systems, and on the right-hand side is a console with all the technology on which the Hybris is based upon. As I just want to mention to the group that Hybris has leveraged pretty much a Java and Java-related framework to the maximum, so that it can actually be available, and the maximum interoperability is the main focus of Hybris. And as I see, SAP moving forward is adopting and bringing into its whole domain of all the business services. so that those services can be opened up to our internal and external customer in a way without much trouble, and integration should be seamless. So this is the focus. So today, why we have kept this REST-based webinar, because there is an immense focus from the industry side, like how much interoperability it provides at the scaling level. It actually makes the integration really, really simple, and at the same time, it also provides a modular-based development approach, which I'm going to share with the team. Sean, can you please move forward? So as Praveen was talking about, so there are three different chapters within this webinar. One is I'm going to talk about the REST. Then I will jump on to what the Hybris REST is, then talking about the SAP integration into that. Sean, next please. So this is very simple, representational state transfer. It has all those different methods supported by the URI, and any of the media types, XML, JSON, and HTML text can be supported on the different HTTP request and response port. Next, please. This is a kind of a reference in terms of like what works behind the scene. So overall, there is a REST client sitting on the HTTP client. There is on the app server, there is a REST resource, and the resource is applicable whenever we talk about the RESTful services. So any of the command which is sent over HTTP or get, post, put, delete with the data payload, that get recognized by the resource. I am going to move forward quickly on this because this is just a baseline to ensure that we come to the page before we move on to the Hybris. Next, please. This is what I explained. There is a resource, and all the methods like put, get, post, those are the verbs. Request headers if we want to put any additional information for the resource, and the request body. Next, please. These are the characteristics as I talk about it. Uniform, it's stateless, cacheable, layered, it's decoupled. Next, please. And this question comes a lot during my training classes at SOAP versus REST. SOAP envelopes everything into its packet, and it basically creates its own verbs. So when I deal with the REST, it is more like when we deal with the nouns, just like, when we say about the REST, it is more like, get me all the customers' orders instead of in service with a validated customer credit. So, this is eventually within the packaging, because within the HTTP, the whole SOAP package has the whole message, which also it talks about like what services need to be called, whereas on REST side, it is more like the services are coupled with the HTTP request parameters, just like put, get, and those. Next, please. Same thing, next, please. Yes, so JAX-RS are the Java standards for writing these RESTful services, and there are many ways to do it. You can customize it also, but JAX-RS is Java standard, which provides a Java way to structure this whole thing in a package format. Next, please. And Jersey is important because Jersey is the reference implementation of JAX-RS, and Hybris, a dependency on REST-RS depends on this Jersey framework. Right, next, please. There are some Spring MVC, as the Spring is also being bundled with the Hybris. So when we choose about it, sometimes during development, teams actually start, the ones those who come from the Spring background, they start writing about it. But we have to be a little bit cautious that, what it is, because Spring MVC writing of the RESTful services is not JAX-RS compatible. So ensuring that a compatibility across the platform, a JAX-RS way of writing RESTful services is the way to go. Next, please. Request processing, it is all about how the JAX actually send this, and the back end, JAXB is very important because all the binding before any request is sent back as a response, that actually is processed through the JAXB XML binding, which happens at the server side of it. Resources, this is pretty much in a linear fashion. What it happens, hits the controller actually sends it to the source. Resource is mapped, and that's actually all the configuration through the Spring, it gets leveraged through that. And when it hits the proper resource, exactly, it knows that which get, put, post, what are those methods it maps to based on the path, and then eventually that method is called, and then it produces annotation is going to say that what kind of response is going to be generated. Next, please. Next, please. So these are the annotations, what we're talking about as we start looking into moving that, how we are going to write those RESTful services. And so these are the method annotations which are going to put up the methods, which will say whether it is a get, whether the HTTP GET is going to invoke which method, put and post, those kind of things. Next, please. This is path annotation, which basically like the path which you go in the URL, how it maps to the classes. This path annotation is used. This is all JAX-RS. Next, please. Again, the parameter within the method. Next. This is just an example, what I just spoke about. If you look at it at the class level, there is a path, which is an example. So the URI will have an example within the path. Then there is a get, post, and get. So these are the methods. As you say, okay, item, it's going to come to example / item. It's going to go to get. It's a / category items, and then you will have those path parameters, category and subcategory. It's going to fetch out of the path, and then it's going to give you the result. Next, please. Same produces and consumes. These are two at the mass level. Next, please. So this is an example which, like you can say, this is what it's going to consume. I'm sending an application XML, and then I'm going to produce an application XML. So produces, so this method produces and consumes an XML, as an input and output. Next, please. And the way we have the UDDI for the SOAP side of it, this is web application descriptor language. Jersey actually generates out of it. So if you want to really find it out that, how, what are the methods being exposed. So this can be used to find it out, and this is what we use basically, like even to find it out from the SAP side of. Next, please. Example. Next, please. Okay, so that was all about what the REST is. So we are going to see now, how the Hybris, have incorporated into its platform, this REST. Next, please. So all of that, it comes down to that it actually capitalizes JAX-RS, which is ANO-based RESTful framework. It is based on the Jersey reference implementation of JAX-RS. It integrates this RESTful into the Spring Beans, Spring Web Services support. So these are the standards which are supported by the Hybris Web Services stack. Next, please. So when we, if you come really deep into the hybrid side of it, this slide is very, very important because this is the key to understand what is happening within the engine of Hybris. Because if we know that Hybris a model which we call data model, which is right sitting on top of the database service layer, that is a Hybris way of exposing any of the data entry through the model. And before Hybris can decide that they have to actually expose any of those models match into the RESTful services, there is another piece which comes into the picture because model is a very complex way of Hybris way to do the persistence along with the databases. But it was not geared to accommodate all the JAXB kind of marshalling and unmarshalling. So that's why the important thing which we need to learn in this practice is, when we look at the model, this is very much a Hybris way of marshalling, unmarshalling in its own model, which is not JAXB compliant. So to make any of the resource available out of the model, just you can think about a order, you can think about an item, you can think about any of the item variant. If those are the models we are creating, so Hybris is going to create those beans out of when it builds it. But at the same time, they are not. I cannot just use them as is because the reason being they are not a JAX-RS compliant. So what it does is that if I let my Hybris, any module, so if I'm writing a custom module, so I let the Hybris know that this custom module is actually web services enabled. So that is the key. When I say that this is a web services enabled, so I will also tell basically how we tell it so that this is web services enabled. So there is a platform optional extension within the Hybris. So that is called platform web services. Platform web services has if you get into a platform web services and look into its directory structure and everything within that, you will find it out that all the framework stack, which I was talking in the earlier slide, like all the Jersey libraries, all the Spring integration libraries with Jersey, all the GSR libraries, they are part of that. So now what happens is that, when I ask Hybris that I am writing this custom, my custom module, which I want it to expose as services, which is a RESTful services, then actually I have to say it by way of going into the local extension.xml. So that is one file, and there I say that this is the module, this is this. So all the DTO classes, this data transfer objects, those are created for me. So they actually maps one-to-one into the model. So whenever from the website, when I send any request, which is coming on the HTTP, I hit my actually data transfer object, and data transfer object one-to-one maps to model. So now what happens is like internally, it will package, marshal, unmarshal what's needed at a DTO level, and then it knows that what model at the back end it has to map to and send the request to. So this is the way. So on the left hand side and the right hand side, I say JAXB. So all the JAXB based marshalling unmarshalling is happening between HTTP and DTO. And then as we move a little bit down the line, so there is a graph node and the graph property annotation. So those annotation Hybris uses to marshal what's coming from DTO into the model. So this is a very important slide. So we must keep this in mind that when we are writing any other services. And next, please. So this is just an example. I don't want to spend too much time. And this slide will be shared with you, and we are always here to take questions. So this is an example when we deal with these things. Next, please. And this is I just wanted to show some of the internal things what happening. So from my, laptop, I was taking these screenshots, which is very important because the reason being, if you go, I was talking about platform web services, what's there. These are all the libraries, so even though Jersey right now is on 1.19, so but still in 5.2, which I was experimenting it with the 1.3 and all those libraries. So then on the right hand side, if you see on my laptop here, so it basically shows that what the platform services project is. Next, please. So this is actually WebXML, how it's configured. Next, please. And pretty much, explanation of developing web services, that what we need to do actually to develop it, because at the end of the day, it's also important, learning one thing and then how we are going to develop it. So as I said, that we can go, JAX-RS, which is the preferred way. So I'm going to share, some of our things. Next, please. And so this is one of the extension to customization of price resource, within Hybris. So Hybris model got extended into the price resource, and then if you look at it, there is a right at the end there is a get consume, get price. So this is a resource, and eventually I can get the price of an item from here. So just wanted to show that, how this is done. Next, please. So this is a picture of when we start doing it. First what you should do is that you basically run your extension generation. It's going to create, and then you go to the step number 2. You look at it, that local extension.xml. You make sure that your platform web services is also there. Then you will see down here webinar 2, B2C. Those are all the projects we created to just see basically what happens behind the scenes. When we do that, we come here on third. So webinar 2C. So this is the structure it looks like. When I run platform and so it actually builds some more files within that. And next, please. And then eventually, when we build it, so if everything comes together the right way, we will see on that there is a build successful, that it's basically going to, and if you see here my webinar, a webinar 2C, if you just carefully see it, all the project which I was showing, that it got built perfectly by Hybris. Next, please. So this is a Hello World service which we wrote, and so just compiled it. Next, please. Okay, so that was all about at a core level. Quickly, what I can summarize in 20 minutes. What is the Hybris? How it uses all that RESTful framework. Now, the question comes is like, can we really leverage this approach to actually go and access any of the SAP resource? Okay, so let's see that if that's possible. So move forward, please. So we actually learned something from this SAP Fiori Architecture, to do that. And Praveen, would you like to say something on this one, or that's fine? So overall, actually, this architecture is based on same way, front-end server, all the back-end SAP Business Suite and Business Suite on HANA. They are exposed as these RESTful way. So the front-end, if you look at it, any of the devices, if they can actually know HTML, CS, and JavaScript, pretty much can write their own application. So if they can do it, so I can also use a JAX-RS client on my Hybris side, and can plug into that and call these services. So let's see how we see it. So this is our reference architecture, where we see that how a SAP can be integrated into this whole suite of services. So the same way, like, if we start from the top, there are composite applications, left here, there are resources, these are all RESTful resources, and then all the DTOs, and that simplified picture which I showed you, the way we view that picture in our context, this is what basically we see it. All the customer order invoices, those are all the resources. They actually talk to the information access services layer, where the Hybris models, if we go pure with the Hybris models to DTO, that happens. Now we see an opportunity that, okay, if I plug in JAX-RS adapter there, and just from there on, I actually write a Java-based, a client, so that, any front-end server sitting on SAP, Business Suite, and HANA, so I can actually call those services. For example, when I write a commerce application, this happens like, we want to know that, what is the inventory, we want to know what the price is, if price has changed, So those things are sometimes becomes critical to fetch it, in real time, near real time fashion. Even though most of the implementation I have seen is that this is the batch which is sent, overnight and all that. So all the inventory as well as, pricing information is available to us. But sometimes there is a need for, point of sale people to see that, okay, I want to sell it, because at the end of the day, the goal is that the commerce has to enable efficiency in bringing, all these together, so that supply chain, can become as efficient as possible. So, so if we can really leverage this in a real time, it goes to the business stakeholder loves it. So this is pretty much a crux of what started from RESTful, coming back to Hybris, and coming back to the combination of both of them with the customization of the way we look at it, into that how we can put those adapters there and start calling SAP services. So this is pretty much in today's my discussion. I wanted to bring to everyone that when we leave today, just have this this print in mind, so that we start looking into how the REST is working, how the Hybris is working, and how at the end we can call these SAP services. Next, please. So conclusion is that we have it's a flexible API, and Hybris, Jersey, Spring, SAP REST, and Java Stack integration, developing configuration, ignition REST service is easy. So this is pretty much the conclusion is. So overall, I open that up. I'm pretty sure there would be some questions, and I would love to talk about like what your thoughts are, and anything you want to share. So, Sean, Praveen, please let me know if there is. Yeah.
Sure, Ravi. Thank you. Thanks, Ravi. That's very helpful. Audience, please post your questions in the questions panel on the right side of the control. The control panel, so that we will have Mr. Ravi answer any of your questions. So the first question I have over here is, are there any integration kit provided by Hybris and SAP for this integration?
Actually, because as I see for this SAP, they have opened up, basically kit is that SAP has provided all the services in a RESTful way. So basically, if you look at it, it is now, if we just plug that into any of the RESTful way, we can just make use of it. So example is Fiori, So there is all the services available, and we can actually just make use of it. But is there anything specific to that? I just want to know, because if suppose any REST resource is available from the SAP repository side, I see it pretty much that they have given the solution for the consumer to use it. But I would love to hear if there is anything beyond that, if your thoughts were.
Thanks, Ravi. I have another question from Mr. Mehdi Matfi. Are there any out-of-the-box REST services? Let me give you some address this question, Ravi. From SAP perspective, there are OData services that is from SAP, like it can be from SAP ECC or CRM. SAP has came up with several OData services that are going to expose your backend services through NetWeaver Gateway. So there are several services that are available, and SAP is still coming up with more and more OData services which are based on RESTful services. And that means I can simply say it as like an SAP OData service is a use case for RESTful architecture. That is one thing. And from Hybris side, Ravi, would you like to address that, please?
And Hybris, all the domains, as say orders, items, if you look at it from the shopping cart perspective, all of those domain entities are exposed as a RESTful way also.
Thanks, Ravi. I have another question from Mr. Mark. Any thoughts on how SAP Data Hub fits into your architecture?
SAP Data Hub. So that is if suppose the way I look at it, if the Data Hub must be supporting different protocols. So it is by means of where SAP sees as an integration platform, with its peripheral system. So when I look at what I just ran by, I am not expert on the Data Hub side of SAP. But if suppose SAP Data Hub provides the way Praveen was talking about the OData services, if through that gateway we can channelize through Data Hub, so we are actually in a position to access those services through the Data Hub. And if there are other means by which those integration points are available, whether that is through JMS or they are through JAX-RPC, we can write some custom services within a Hybris so that those services can be integrated with the SAP Data Hub and then later on exposed within the Hybris platform.
Thanks, Ravi. I have another question from, so all master data and transaction interfaces between SAP and Hybris needs to develop for the integration. Do we need to use only OData services? In the event SAP does not, what is the other recommended alternatives? Well, let me take this question, Ravi. When it comes to the OData services, there are several OData services. For all the standard processes, SAP is coming up with OData services. It's like, I would say, BAPIs. You have BAPIs for almost everything. Of course, there are specific situations where you will have to extend BAPIs, or you will have to create your own custom BAPIs, but that is rare. OData service is also in the similar lines. SAP is trying to come up with these OData services for all the means, and SAP is encouraging partners like us to come up with more and more OData services. If you go back to the previous question, SAP Data Hub, I would say it's more of Hybris Data Hub than SAP Data Hub, because this Data Hub that through IDOC, we will usually integrate between Hybris Data Hub and SAP ERP system. So when it comes back to this question again, OData services, you can take an existing BAPI or an RFC or any function module, and you can simply create an OData layer on top of it. It's like a wrapper. That's simply it is. So as long as your backend process is up and running, exposing that process through an OData services is not going to take much time. Any more questions? What are the usage guidelines between Data Hub or SAP process orchestration? Can we not directly integrate with SAP? We can. I mean, we don't. It's not that we have to use process orchestration for this. Process orchestration is a methodology that SAP recommends. But nowadays, SAP is moving more towards NetWeaver Gateway. That's what even SAP is recommending to the partners, to come up with more and more integration scenarios on through NetWeaver Gateway, because NetWeaver Gateway is going to become a hub for all of your integration needs from your SAP backend applications. Like it can be ECC, CRM, or for that matter, even for business warehouse too. So through this NetWeaver Gateway, you will be exposing your OData services, which are a use case of RESTful services, to any of the consuming applications. It can be, a RESTful client, that is a browser, or it can be any mobile app, or it can be any other third-party application that would like to consume these services, and it is going to be real time.
And Praveen, on top of it, I will add to what you're saying is that the clear distinction is where the business use case, because business process orchestration and choreography, that's where process orchestration is very, very helpful. When we see that services are autonomous and very atomic, there we see that as if our OData or any of the RESTful way of services are the best way to go. Because there is a, as you said, wrapper and facade, that becomes pretty much, where we start seeing that, these business processes are more aligned with the process orchestration versus the RESTful. Any more questions, please? Hello, Praveen. Hope I didn't lose you.
Hello. I'm sorry. Seems like you are not able to hear me. There was one more question. Can you shed light on caching in Hybris?
On caching?
Mm-hmm. Caching.
Okay. Yeah, just want to make sure. A Hybris cache is actually based on open standard eCache. So if I'm I think that's CACHE, right? Praveen, that's what you're talking about, right?
That's correct. Yeah,
okay.
That's correct.
So basically, anything as a response, any data domain, or any processing within a Hybris, you can configure. So Hybris caches are configurable. So you can actually go and configure that. Okay, I want to keep the country list, into this because in the cache, because I don't want every time to go to the database and talk about it. I want to have these, these items be available. So it's so when you look below, basically what's happening is, EH cache is their main component which is supporting this cache platform. And if there is anything beyond that, my email would be there. So please feel free to just send me your question. If you are having any project related, things which you want to discuss or talk about it, I would be glad to, answer those questions in detail as well.
Thanks, Ravi. Let me move into the next. Yeah, it seems like we have no more questions for now. So please post any more questions and I will give another 2 minutes for next question. Ravi, in the meanwhile, would you like to add anything extra, like any use case or any business situation that you have done in your previous projects, so that it will be helpful for the audience when we wait for the question.
Thanks, Praveen. As we are putting together within our practice itself, working very closely with our SAP subject matter expert to see, where the process orchestration and other means of so far SAP has provided for integration, and some of our the way for the RESTful way, those things kind of are the ones. And then, apart from that, I don't want to talk too much about myself because this focus is more like on this topic. But I've been engaged in a very complex, e-commerce implementation. Like there are Oriental Trading was one of them, limited brands. Pretty much all of their systems, and then there is some of the Hybris. There is one Canadian company, and then a few companies in Europe where we were using this. And at the same time, I've been in my, around 5 years ago, was involved in non-Hybris platform too, because a lot of knowledge is all about like how the commerce is evolved, just like ATG and IBM commerce. But the way I have seen Hybris is like how it has embraced all these standards and moved away from proprietary. So I think, pretty much it makes a very good choice, for the organization, get the best value out of it.
There is one more question. Thanks, Ravi. I got one more question here. Any security-related issues with this approach?
Any
security-related issues with this, RESTful-based integration approach?
Good question, and as we know that security is always paramount, to any of the things we do. So overall, as any request and response is channeled on HTTP. So if we know that there is something which we want to send across on the wire is sensitive, we have to use HTTPS. And when we come to HTTPS, then we are talking about whether we want to go with a certificate-based SSL or anything else. So depending on the usage, we can put a security-oriented which is pretty much built within the HTTP. It is nothing within the Hybris, because overall Hybris is more like authentication. Is all about built within HTTP protocol, and authorization, which is another part of the security. That's where we can control user's action. We can control from which domain. We can control the URLs, as I was saying, RESTful, because at the end of the day it's a URL. When you hit it, your server is going to respond to that. But there are means within Hybris where I can go to console and say, okay, these are some of the URLs which I don't want to be exposed, and to make sure that only the authorized users they are only can go and make use of those services. So both the things, authentication as well as the authorization, that's built within the framework.
Thanks, Ravi. I got one more question over here. Can Hybris on cloud work with in-premise or on-premise SAP?
Yeah, very good question, because as more and more people think about putting this data center on the cloud, and the best part of this approach is that it actually makes use of HTTP, and anything when you start making use of HTTP, then, then the boundaries within, then the network boundaries, are unlimited. So overall, the answer is absolutely yes.
Thanks, Ravi. I have one more question over here from Mr. Mark. Does the SAP enhancement pack or release of ECC backend is on? Our ECC backend is on encourage or limit particular method of integration. Example: are there things available on AHP 7 that were not available on previous versions? Let me take this question, Ravi.
Sure.
I think if I may understand this question, it's more about your EHP releases. So if you are in a lower EHP level than EHP 7, yes, there might be some limitations when it comes to the availability of OData service, standard OData services that are available. Because SAP, though SAP is backporting most of the OData services that they are coming up with, there are certain services which are not available in the lower backend versions like EHP2, EHP3, or all of these. To have a NetWeaver gateway, you don't need to be on EHP6. I'm sorry, ECC6, but it can go. I mean, it can go up to 4.7, I think. But there are several challenges with that. But if you would like to utilize standard OData services, it's better to be on the latest version, that is EHP7. You can still leverage most of the services with older EHP2, like EHP2, EHP3 through EHP6. Another question I have over here is, what are the code development skill sets we should consider for Hybris implementation? Ravi, would you like to address that question, please?
What are
the core development skill sets? So what kind of a team you would need if you would like to implement Hybris?
Hybris is pure Java-based framework. So, and if the team has a Java-based capabilities, like I can just give all the framework. Take an example like Java, then you should have good understanding of the Spring framework. You should have good understanding about JAX. You should have RS. You should have good understanding about web services, all about from JAXB, XML, at the databases. So there is a full stack, just like what it used for the searching and all that. So it uses Apache Solar. So what it used for the caching, it uses ES Cache. So I have pretty much the full list, and would glad to send email. And for me, if you if this respondent, this question, I can send the whole list, what it is there. But pretty much, all of these frameworks and technologies.
Sure. Thanks, Ravi. I would like to add a couple of points to that one, because I mean, it is more a question on Hybris, but we are considering here Hybris in integration with SAP. So there will be from SAP side, like OData experts, NetWeaver gateway experts, this kind of expertise you would need when you are considering implementing the Hybris when you already have SAP in your landscape. So that is an additional skill set you might be looking for. Yeah, that should be pretty much it. Thank you. I have, it seems like there is one more question, Ravi. How are the web services built with Hybris platform?
Oh, yes. So this is, as I was explaining during my presentation, like it uses all the JAX-RS base standards. So it uses Jersey, JSR 311, specs, it uses JAXB. And so overall, a platform services is the template available, which actually any of the modules, those who want to be web service enabled, they actually depends on this template. So that is the way it's actually going to write it down. Then all the models, as I said, those models are exposed, to the DTOs. So the marshalling, unmarshalling between the client, HTTP client, it happens with the DTO, and then the DTO to all the models at the back end. So pretty much, that's what it is.
Thanks, Ravi. I have another question from Mehdi. Do we need an understanding of IMPX to work with Hybris?
Very good question. Very good question. So this is Hybris Impact is an import facility by which it has given a easy to use mechanism, because Hybris database is pretty much within the control of Hybris, because it actually uses, there are plethora of tables. So then on top of it is the model. So it's a very equivalent of a SQL language it has used in Impact, where you basically construct your queries and give all the data to load that into the database. So Impact Hybris uses that a lot, within its own data import facilities. When suppose, just take an example, when I build any commerce site, all the storefront apparel or electronics and all that. So when it builds a database, a fresh database for me, so it uses all of those impacts and all the XML, which I configure to just port in the database for me to get ready for my website. So I will say, this is an important tool and it works really well. And there can be other things can be used as well, custom written, but this pretty much I have seen works pretty well, and most of the time, we use this on a project.
Thanks, Ravi. Seems like there is no more questions right now in the question pane. So I think if you have any more questions, I think we are also almost coming to the end of the webinar. So if you have any more questions, please write to us. We will share this presentation with you guys, and you can come back to us at any time if you have any specific technical questions or strategy or implementation related questions.
Slide,
anything?
Sean,
Sorry?
Can you move to the next slide, please? Our thanks slide.
So if you have any specific questions on anything, please reach out to us. We will be very happy to help you with your questions or address, or anything specific to next steps. For example, like you are considering a new e-commerce portal, or you are looking at different options. So we will be able to, as a third party, we will be able to help you position different options together. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Ravi. Thanks for sharing your thoughts.
Have a good time.